What's up, guys? Neil Orfield here, and I'm going to show you how I'll be setting up my fantasy cruncher for the Monday Night Football game between the Buccaneers and the Cowboys. I'll be setting up here for the largest field GPP on DraftKings. First thing I'm going to do is remove some players from my player pool. Actually, no. First thing I'm going to do is rearrange my columns here. Got a quick view saved so I can see what I want to see in the middle of my screen, which is ownership projections, my projections, exposure caps, and then how much I get of players once I have run a crunch. While you're coming in, please do like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button if you want to get alerts when our shows go live. Okay, now that I have rearranged my columns, now I'm going to remove some players from my player pool. I'm just going to sort by projection and then remove every player with a projection of 0. This will save me some time when I'm making groups later, because these players won't show up and muddy the waters. Okay. Good. Okay, we've removed all of the 0 projection players. Next, I'm going to go to the captain tab, and I like to set an exposure cap here on all players in the captain spot. In games where I want to spread out my exposure to different captains, I'm setting exposure of 20%, so I'm going to get to at least 5 different captains in this set of lineups. Now I'm going to go into advanced options, and I'll be working in 2 tabs here, the general tab and the groups tab. Starting here in the general tab, I'm going to set unique players per lineup to just 1. I'm going to keep it at the default. If I were making 40 or fewer lineups, I might change this to 2 unique players for the sake of diversifying my lineup set. But I'm setting up here for a 150 lineup set. And a 150 lineup set, I don't mind having just 1 unique player per lineup. Salary cap, I'm not going to set a minimum. I will set a maximum just for the purpose of avoiding the most duplicated lineups. If I'm lucky enough to win, I want to win a lot of money. And the best way to do that is to avoid being duplicated. An easy way to avoid being duplicated is to leave a little bit of salary on the table. Not trying to avoid entirely being duplicated, but trying to avoid those most duplicated lineups. So here I'm going to set a salary cap of $49,000. So now Fantasy Cruncher won't give me any lineups that use anything more than 49,000. Of course, the default is 50,000 is the actual salary cap on DraftKings, but Fantasy Cruncher is only going to give me lineups using up to 49,000 in salary. Offensive players versus defense, the default is max of 2 players versus your defense. I'm going to set it to a max of 5. So I could have 5 players from one team against the defense of the opposing team. Not something that I'm going to get in many lineups, not something that wins all that often, but something the field doesn't like to play, and it certainly can win. So I want it to be a possibility if it projects well enough. Exposure cap, I'm going to leave it 100% universally. I already changed in the captain spot to 20%. Randomness, I am going to, it's already turned on here. Set my randomness at 30%. Minimum projection included in calculation, the default is set to 3. I'm going to leave it at 3. If there's a player I want in my player pool who projects for fewer than 3 fantasy points, I'll just manually boost their projection to above 3. I should say, using randomness, if you want more control over your lineups, use a lower number here. You could even use no randomness at all if you want complete control, but I like to include some randomness in my process. And then players from each team max, the default is set to 5. I'm going to leave that at 5, so I could have 5 players from one team against 1 player from the opposing team. You know what I did immediately the first time I won 6 figures in a DFS contest? I converted my trial membership to Stokastic, awesome at the time, to a full annual subscription. That's because I knew these were the best tools in the industry. That was 2019, and they've gotten even better since then. Well, good news, you can get access to these same tools without winning 6 figures first with a great offer from BetMGM. You can get 2 months of Stochastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $240 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more, and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all that, you also get bet insurance on your first bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, you get the money. If you lose the bet, you still get your money back and site credits. It's a great deal from BetMGM and a long trial subscription to the best DFS tools out there. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Reminder, make sure you use the link or use promo code PLATINUMSUB or we won't be able to track you. Next, I'm going to move over to groups. and I'm going to create a few groups related to my quarterbacks. All right, first I'm going to make a Tom Brady captain group. So here's Tom Brady in the captain spot, going to make him my key player. Then I'm going to sort by position. I've already removed all of the zero projections, so only players who are likely to play show up here. Now I'm going to add all of these Buccaneers pass catchers to a secondary group. And I am going to include the running backs, fairly involved in the passing game. Okay. Now, Tom Brady, not much of a rushing quarterback. If he is going to be the optimal captain, it's going to be because he's throwing for a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns. If he's throwing all of these yards and touchdowns to just one receiver, or primarily to one receiver, that receiver is likely to outscore him, just because on every passing play the receiver outscores the quarterback. They get more points per yard, more points per touchdown. They also get a point per reception. So it's pretty easy for receivers to outscore the quarterback if the quarterback is concentrated on just one. So generally, with a non-rushing quarterback like Tom Brady, I'd prefer to have at least two pass catchers in the flex when I have Tom Brady at captain. So I think it's kind of up in the air whether you should leave it like this and say only require one, but then give boosts to each player to make it more like you get two and more. I think if I were playing 40 or fewer lineups, I would change this to two and say, if I have Tom Brady at captain, I just want two players from this group in the flex. That's probably what I want most of the time. He does have one rushing touchdown on the year. He rushes for like 0 yards per game, maybe 2 yards per game or so. He's not much of a rusher. He does have one rushing touchdown on the year. So obviously he has a little bit of potential for a spike week, but it's not high potential for Tom Brady. So I think it would be totally reasonable, even in a 150 set, to set this to require at least two. I think I'm going to leave it at one and just give boosts for a little bit more flexibility in my lineups. But it is really debatable whether one or two is better here. I'm just going to leave it at one. I'm going to give boost to all of these receivers as well, just to make it more likely that I get to two or more. All right, so that's what I'm going to do for my Tom Brady captain group. Now I'm going to rename this first. I'll also make a Dak captain group. So I'm going to find Dak in the captain spot, make him my key player. And same thing. Now I'm going to add all of these Cowboys receivers to the secondary group. I should add part of my reasoning for the way I'm treating Tom Brady with only requiring one, but then giving boosts on top, is because that is what I'm going to do with Dak. Dak does rush for about 15 yards per game this year, showing more rushing upside than he has in recent years. So I think that this is the best setting for Dak, is to say only require one of these pass catchers and then give boost to the rest. And the reason that affects Tom Brady for me is this does affect the likelihood that you're going to get these lineups. So because I am giving boost to these pass catchers, these lineups are going to look better in Dak Prescott captain lineups. When you're giving boost, it essentially raises the projection of each of these players in those Dak Prescott captain lineups, makes it more likely that you get to more Dak Prescott captain lineups. So just kind of evens the playing field a little bit by doing the same setting with Tom Brady. I'm still more likely to get to two, but then those boosts that I'm giving, it's going to make it, if I don't give the boost to Tom Brady and just require two, it's going to make it less likely that I get Tom Brady captain lineups. Whereas this way, it's going to make it more likely with a little bit more flexibility, and then the same boost that I'm giving to Dak Prescott. So now I'm going to do the same thing with Dak. All right, so now I've given a little boost to the pass catchers for the Cowboys, a little bit smaller boost for the running backs. And then I'll do the same thing, not the exact same thing. I'll create groups also for Brady in the flex and Dak in the flex. So I'll find Brady in the flex, make him a key player. Then I'll add all of these Bucs receivers. to the secondary group. And now, because we have Brady in the flex, we can also add all of those receivers in the captain spot. Okay, looks good. And I'm going to leave this group just as it is. All I'm saying is if I've got Tom Brady in the lineup in the flex, I want at least one receiver from the Buccaneers somewhere else in my lineup. Again, because Tom Brady just does not have much rushing upside. It's pretty unlikely for him to be in the optimal lineup without any pass catchers. And then we're going to do the same thing for Dak. And Dak, make him a key player. And then add all of these Cowboys receivers. I am including Zeke in my Dak groups. Not much of a pass catcher, but he has been running routes on about 50% of passing plays for the Cowboys. So some involvement in the passing game. All right, looks good. Exact same thing. Not giving any kind of boost. I'm just saying if I've got Dak in the flex, I want at least one pass catcher from the Cowboys somewhere else in my lineup. So that's going to do it for my groups. I'm just going to save this. Okay. And then I'm going to crunch out 150 lineups using my projections. You know what I did immediately the first time I won six figures in a DFS contest? I converted my trial membership to Stokastic, awesome at the time, to a full annual subscription. That's because I knew these were the best tools in the industry. That was 2019, and they've gotten even better since then. Well, good news, you can get access to these same tools without winning six figures first with a great offer from BetMGM. You can get 2 months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $240 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all that, you also get bet insurance on your first bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, you get the money. If you lose the bet, you still get your money back and site credits. It's a great deal from BetMGM and a long trial subscription to the best DFS tools out there. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Reminder, make sure you use the link or use promo code PLATINUMSUB or we won't be able to track you. And now that I've set my correlation, set some rules to avoid duplication, the last steps for me is double checking the lineup, seeing if they correlate the way I want them to, and then making sure I'm getting to exposure levels that I like for each player. So first thing I'm going to do here is look at the lineups themselves. First lineup I see is Chris Godwin in the captain spot with Tom Brady. Kate Otten looks good. Dak with CD and Noah Brown. Everything correlates well here. Dak in the captain spot. We've got two pass catchers from the Cowboys. We've got Tom Brady in the flex with Kate Otten. Looks good there. And then, of course, the kicker for the Cowboys as well. Now we have Tom Brady in the captain spot with Godwin, Fournette, and Otten. Like to see that. Dak with Gallup. Everything looks good. CeeDee Lamb in the captain spot with Dak. Looks good. Tom Brady with just Rachaad White as his only pass catching option. I think it's fine. Rachaad White, relatively cheap, and he is fairly involved in the passing game. Could definitely see Rachaad White scoring a receiving touchdown. So I think it's fine to include Tom Brady with just Rachaad White. Next, we've got Brady with Godwin. Dak with CD and Brown. Looks good. Brady with Godwin, Fournette, and Rachaad White. This is an interesting one. So you got Rachaad White in the captain spot with double running back with Leonard Fournette plus another skill player. Honestly, I don't think I have any kind of issue with it. I think this is a lineup people will be disinclined to play, and I think that it is a viable lineup. So I'm fine with it. Dak in the captain spot with just CeeDee Lamb. So just one pass catcher with Dak. I did not require two. Dak has shown a little bit of rushing upside this year, so I think I'm okay with just one receiver in the flex. And then we've got Brady with Fournette and Otten. Looks good. Yeah, in general, I would say these lineups are looking okay. Here's one, Chris Godwin in the captain spot, and then we've got 1, 2, 3 skill players in the flex. Sometimes I have a little bit of concern with if you've got a skill player from one team in the captain spot, having too many from that team also in the flex. But in this case, it's one running back. It's two running backs. Rachaad White, a relatively cheap running back. Kate Otten as well. I think it works out okay to have Chris Godwin in the captain spot here because these guys can pay off their salaries without needing to have the ball a ton. Everything looks good there. So here's one that I don't love. Brady in the captain spot with just Godwin as a pass catcher. Not my favorite thing. If I get a handful of these in 150 lineups, I'd be okay with it. Sometimes you even see statuesque quarterbacks in the flex without any pass catchers in or near the top of the leaderboard. It can happen. Here he's got at least one pass catcher with him. Say he throws a touchdown to Godwin, throws another touchdown to Evans, but Evans only has 4 receptions for 40 yards and a touchdown. Not quite enough to be optimal. I think it's reasonable. There's ways for this lineup to win. So I think in general these lineups look okay to me. The other thing that I like to check is my player exposures. So I just go position by position here. Starting quarterback, 41% Dak, 56% Brady. Seems fine. Running back, getting into a lot of Fournette. Not much Pollard or Zeke. A little bit of Rachaad White. So then I might say here, I think I want a little bit more Pollard and Zeke. So maybe I just give little bumps to their projections. Go incrementally as I'm doing this. I don't make big changes generally. Sometimes I'll do a couple points at a time if I really think I need to. I'm getting like nobody from somebody I want, but here I'm just going to make incremental changes to projections until I get to exposure levels that I like for each player. You can see here 58% Lamb, 65% Godwin, just 7% Mike Evans. That seems low. I'll give him a small boost. 12% Gallup might be fine, but 1% Russell Gage seems low. I should sort by salary here, make it easier to see how everybody is salaried relative to each other. So you can see here, Gage projects worse than Michael Gallup, just barely, and he's more expensive. So it makes sense I'm going to get more Gallup than Gage, but I still think that I'm going to want to get closer to that number. So I'll give him a little boost. He's still, projecting worse than Gallup here. Probably get less than Gallup, but more than one lineup, hopefully. Julio Jones, interesting. Only 6% projected ownership. I'll probably have some interest in him at that level. So I'm going to make sure I get to some Julio. Actually, I'm going to give him a bigger boost because I'm getting 0 currently. Probably not going to get much with a small boost or any with a small boost. T.Y. Hilton projected for 7% ownership. I'll give him a slight boost. Good amount of Noah Brown. I'm going to leave him where he is. If I want to get Scotty Miller into my player pool, maybe, he's got the potential for one long touchdown. I'll get him into the player pool. Tight ends, Dalton Schultz, not getting to a ton. Getting a lot of Kate Otten. I'm going to give Schultz a little bit of a boost. Maybe I'll get Ferguson into the player pool. Cameron Brate into the player pool. Yeah, I'm going to have some interest in these guys, I think. I'll leave it at that. 50% Brett Maher is interesting, 21% suck up. I'm not going to change their projections. I've made projections elsewhere. I probably want less than 50% Brett Maher, but again, I've already made some projection alterations elsewhere. All projections are relative to each other, so that's probably going to bring down my exposure to Brett Maher a little bit. Not necessarily, but it is likely to. 16% Bucks defense, 0 of the Cowboys. I'm going to give the Cowboys, you can see here, they're much more expensive than the Bucks. So if I just bring them up to 7, I'm probably still not going to get it. I'm only getting 16% Bucks. Still probably would get it. So I'm going to bring them up a little bit above 7 to try to get some Cowboys. Then I'll crunch out again. Yeah, wasn't enough. Still didn't get any Cowboys. So then now I'd, go backwards, add on a little bit to that projection. Kicker's still looking good. Tight ends, okay, getting a little bit more of these guys. K-Dot number, I think, came down slightly. Schultz went up slightly. Still not getting much Mike Evans. You can see he's sandwiched between Chris Godwin and CeeDee Lamb in terms of price. Even if I bring him up to 15 projection, I'm going to get less of Mike Evans and Godwin and Lamb, which is probably good. He projects worse. So I'll bring him up to 15 there. Russell Gage. Okay, both Gage and Gallup went down, so maybe I'll just bring them both up a little bit. Still, Gallup projects better, so it makes sense to, if I give them the same projection, I'm likely to get more of Gallup and Gage because he's cheaper. Still not getting any Julio. Bring him up slightly. Still not getting any Hilton. Him up. Scotty Miller, 4% seems fine. Running backs, yeah, still not getting much of the Cowboys. I'm getting a little bit of Pollard now, but maybe I want to bring up Zeke a little bit. All right, and then I'll crunch again. And I'm not going to do this, 20 times. I'm just going to do it a few times, give you an idea of what things look like. So as you can see, this is the process, just trying to go through until I get to exposure levels that I like. And yeah, you can see I'm getting closer and closer, making incremental changes until I get to exposure levels that I like. And again, because everything is relative, all of these projections are relative to each other, it is kind of nuanced. You got to keep going back and forth until you get to levels that you like. But getting closer, I think, here to how I'd like my lineups to look. Exposure levels that I would like. Maybe I still need to give a little bit more to the Cowboys, looks like. But this is a process, just incremental changes until I get to exposure levels I like. And then, of course, always double checking the actual lineups, seeing if they make sense. If they stop making sense, then you got to figure out why don't they make sense. Go back into advanced options, go to that groups tab, and you can change some of your groups around. You can create new groups or just, change the percentages, boost positive or negative for different players. A lot of things you can do to get to exposure levels that you like and correlations that you like within your lineups. But in general, I think I'm getting close. I think these lineups are looking pretty good here. So I'll leave it at that. I'm going to end the video there. Hope you can find some success tonight using this or a similar process. Good luck.